approval of articles of impeachment.
Withdraw all U.S. troops from Syria.
The 16-year-old from Sweden captured the world's attention.
We are surrounded by the news. It's interspersed into our social media feeds right alongside photos of our friends. Americans check our phones on average once every 12 minutes. That's 80 times a day. And every time we do, we're inundated with an information dump. News is coming to us every day from every corner of the world. Cable news channels even tailor the news to our political preferences, so we only see the things that confirm our own worldview. Do you feel overwhelmed by the amount and scope of news in the world today? Thankfully, we're not the first Christians to think about the theology of news. Karl Barth, who was one of the most important theologians of the 20th century, instructed young theologians to, quote, "Take your Bible and take your newspaper and read both." Barth understood the work of Christian theology to be engaged in the world. That's only possible when you understand what's going on in the world around you. Time magazine reported that Barth believed newspapers are so important that, quote, "I always pray for the sick, the poor, journalists, authorities of the state and the church in that order. Journalists form public opinion. They hold terribly important positions." So taking Barth's instruction to heart, with a newspaper in one hand and a Bible in the other, I'd like to propose 3 elements to form a theology of news. As Christians, we believe that God created all people in God's image, and that we are called as followers of Jesus to expand the circle of people who we are concerned about. To care for other people, we have to learn about them. If we're going to be concerned about people beyond just the friends who we text with, we need the news. Take, for example, the story of migrant children being held in cages by the Trump administration. This news story led Christians and people of other faiths and no faith across the United States to take action in support of immigrant rights. But to take this action, people had to learn what was going on at the border. And we did that by following the stories and reports of journalists on the ground.
I'm now to the point that I have removed all news alerts from my phone.
Really?
I'm not part of any email chain because I found that there was a ton. I mean, it was ringing, honestly, every 3 minutes from some source or another.
So how do we form a spiritual practice around the news? First, let's understand the 2 extremes that we want to avoid. On the one hand, it's reading everything and feeling like we need to be an expert about every news story going on in the world. And then on the other hand, we have totally checking out and just, deleting news apps from our phone because it's all too much. So let's try to find a happy medium, something that's achievable and also responds to, our call to know what's going on in the world. And for me, I like watching the news because a story comes to life when you actually see people and hear their voices. And so my husband and I watch CBS This Morning pretty much every morning, and then CBS Sunday Morning and 60 Minutes on the weekend. And then I try to read the New York Times and the Washington Post just to get top headlines a couple times throughout the day. And finally, we have an obligation not just to be passive receivers of the news produced by others, but instead be active listeners. We can push back and organize around biased outlets like Fox News and attempts to discredit good journalism portrayed as quote-unquote fake news. But even more importantly, we can highlight good stories, share them with our social networks, and contact journalists with ideas for their reporting. Today's good news isn't a gospel passage, it's a reminder to do our part in making news better. So those are some of my thoughts about a theology of news, but I want to hear what you have to say. So leave a comment on this video or reach out to me on Twitter. Let's start a conversation.